Hello, welcome to the final session of day 2 of Tech Days Online. I'm going to introduce my latest, final, most esteemed guest in a moment. But first, 2 pieces of housekeeping. I need to plug the fact that we've got an extra session tomorrow. The day closes with an interview with Gene Kim, which I'm certainly looking forward to.
That should be excellent.
Absolutely. Mr. DevOps. But also, don't go away. So we finish at about 4 o'clock. But leave the stream just sat next to you as you potter, because our friends in America are going to be coming online at about 6 o'clock this evening, and they're going to be running their own Tech Days online with some really, really great content. But enough of them, because our day's way better. With me now, I'm really pleased to welcome Gary Whitaker, a man with a monkey, no less.
Oh yeah, Xamarin Monkey.
Absolutely.
I promised to bring one last time.
Visual Studio's Development and Technologies and a Xamarin MVP. Probably for the benefit of the audience, though, let's start with, what is Xamarin? What else are you going to talk to us about today?
Okay, so Xamarin is a toolkit which allows you to take those lovely .NET development skills you've got and target cross-platform development on Android, iOS, Windows Phone, Mac desktop, Samsung TVs, lots of different platforms. But you're basically using one set, as much as possible, one code base. So we've talked about this in the past. In fact, we've chatted here.
We have last time.
Ago, and I went into some detail then. So it's probably, if anybody wants to know more detail, go back in time and actually look at that video. But basically, there's a whole loads of different ways you can actually write code. And I'll be writing a bit of code today as well. So we'll have a chance to see that. But what I want to talk today about is the fact that Xamarin's pretty much open source across the board.
Really? I did not know that.
So when we were talking last time, Microsoft had just acquired Xamarin. Mm-hmm. So for people who don't know, Xamarin was a company on its own. It spun off the Mono project, which was a way of getting .NET onto Macintoshes and some other platforms.
And Mono itself was an open source project,
yes,
wasn't
indeed,
it? So
yes.
it looks like it's come full circle.
Full circle. But Xamarin was very much closed source. It was they were trying to earn money off it and doing pretty well. Microsoft acquired them, and one of the first announcements was that they were making Xamarin free to everybody, which is lovely. Loads more people now develop using Xamarin because it's a free tool. I say free if you've got Visual Studio. So most people have got Visual Studio.
Okay, so I have to have a Visual Studio license of the various flavors.
No, there's a community edition. So as long as you've got Visual Studio Community Edition, you've got Xamarin. So that's absolutely fun. So it is free, effectively. And then the second part of that conversation was, we're going to make it open source. I'd love to have been in that executive briefing. Now, you know all this IP, this really expensive IP we've just acquired from Xamarin, we're making it free and we're giving it to everybody to look at.
Certainly a brave decision. We paid a fortune, we're giving it away. What? Where's the business model?
So it's all open source. It's really easy to find. You just need to go to open.xamarin.com. And I'll just hop across to that very site. So you can see it's all here. You can link to the various bits of source code, go across to find them on GitHub.
So when you say Xamarin's open source, Gary, what is open source? Are we talking about the runtime that's open source, or the tooling?
The tooling, well, some of the tooling, not the development studio things, but the actual runtime, the compiler, the code behind the runtimes. Okay. So all the .NET-y bits of it are basically open source.
Okay. So in the same way as they open source .NET with sort of .NET Core, .NET Standard,
those
Xamarin's
bits.
in that same kind of family.
That same sort of thing. Okay. And I should say there's sort of 3 parts to that. There's Xamarin iOS, which is the iOS part of it, Xamarin Android, which is the conversions for native. So they're basically taking the Android APIs and converting them into .NET.
Right.
And that's what basically this bit is. And there's another way, so you can write Xamarin code in native, so you can write it using the native APIs converted to .NET, or you can use a thing called Xamarin Forms. And we spoke about Xamarin Forms last time. Xamarin Forms is a cross-platform design language, where you write it once in Xamarin Forms and it basically converts it to the design language of each platform.
Okay.
And Xamarin Forms is open source as well.
So effectively, my runtime is where my business logic sits, and my Xamarin Forms is then the XAML equivalent, if you like.
Yes. Well, your business logic also sits in a common code between all the platforms as well. Though. Okay. So we're getting I work for a company called AppZip, and we do a lot of Xamarin development. We've done about 25 projects in the last 2 years, and I would say the last 5 or 6 of them have all been Xamarin Forms, and we're getting about 90 to 95% code reuse.
Wow.
Across platforms. Only some very minor tweaks where very platform-specific look and feel is being done, not in Xamarin.
And I presume because it's .NET, you've also got the reuse across the Windows platform as well?
Yes. Okay. So they made Xamarin open source last year. And since last year, there's something about these figures. I'm not quite sure what it's saying to us, but there's been 1,721 as of this morning iOS pull requests. Not all of them have been accepted, but quite a large percentage have been accepted. So there's been a real community effort on the iOS side of things. There's been 438 on Android. Now, does that tell us that, that there's more things that needed fixing with the iOS, or just people on iOS? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I'd love to know if someone's out there who's got a bit of feedback and can tell me why.
Is it an indication of interest or issues?
Yeah. But there's been a lot of community effort on there, and you can see the platforms are improving, and it's been a really, really good improvement over this last year. So that community effort's been there. There's always been a community effort on Mono, but there's always been a bit of a lag between putting the stuff into Mono and then getting converted back across to the Xamarin side of things.
So you're an MVP. You're in the community. Are you finding a lot of engagement then around Xamarin from .NET and other developers?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, what we certainly I've found in the last year is I'm going into a lot of line of business teams, sort of business teams who've gone over from being .NET web developers, want to create that mobile app, want it to look native, want it to actually have the feel and the speed of a native application. And funnily enough, now it even looks to be styled. There's a move, whereas a line of business apps used to be really utilitarian. I think they think that users have an expectation now. They have all these apps they can download from the app stores, which look nice and play nice, and they want their apps they use for business to look nice and play nice.
Bland default forms doesn't cut it anymore. Okay.
And that's where Xamarin Forms and the tools can make that happen, because you can do as we've seen on previous talks I've given, there's a lot of styling you can do really easily out of the box on Xamarin. So lots of things you can do very easily.
Okay.
And that's all part of the Xamarin Forms stuff. So Xamarin Forms was this guy, this very nice mugshot is Jason Smith, who's the brains behind Xamarin Forms. And if you ever get a chance to have a look on the wiki about the story behind Xamarin Forms, because it is hilarious how that came about. But I was actually in the audience when Jason announced the fact that Xamarin Forms was going open source.
Right.
And he put this challenge out. He said, look guys, you've been telling me for years that you want this open source so you can contribute. It's open source, contribute. Well, within a day, there'd been a pull request accepted.
Wow.
So there's a very, very rapid turnaround, and it's been 772 Xamarin Forms pull requests. I think I did the maths yesterday, about 60% of those have been accepted. I'm quite slightly wrong, but a lot of, and you can tell there's a lot of really niggly things which have been fixed.
Okay.
Forms, which the team would never have had time to go and look at, because they were very specific use cases. They weren't things which everybody was doing, but they're now fixed and they're getting fixed very quickly. So it's been incredibly beneficial, this whole move to open source. Also, I think the other thing about it, and when I'm talking to businesses, they love the fact that they can go into that code and they can see what it does, particularly from a security point of view. They can see there's no backdoors in there. They've got complete control of it. They can take a copy of that source and actually run from the source rather than running from the pre-compiled stuff. So all those benefits of normal open source. People don't often associate open source and business, but I think there is a real, particularly in the modern age when security has become a major
transparency,
buzzword.
really.
Transparency, that's a huge part of it. So I think that's definitely been a really strong point in the favour, and you can kind of see why Microsoft did it now. As you've said a few times today, not your grandfather's
matter. Yeah, absolutely.
It's very much true.
So you finding? Do you know whether those Xamarin Forms pull requests? So my ignorance, I don't know that much about Xamarin Forms. Can you split those down by iOS and Android, or is Xamarin Forms a cross-platform?
Forms cross-platform.
Okay, so that's benefiting both camps.
But there are specifics to the way it renders on iOS and renders on. So there's sort of platform-specific rendering.
Okay.
And a lot of the tweaks have been around that to make the rendering better on. So there's more commonality between platforms.
Okay.
So it's things like making sure entry boxes are the same height and all the things you want to be common. Obviously, there are differences between platforms. Things look different, and they should look different. You want that. One of the beauties of using the Xamarin approach is you get a application which looks like a native application. It fits in with the styling and the way that an Android app looks as opposed to an iOS look. There's a very different look and feel between the two. Right. And there's a very different look and feel between a modern Android app and an Android app from 2-3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And you need to keep up with that. And by writing in Forms, you get that almost for free.
Okay, great.
Actually, I just want to hop back quickly, because one of the things which is on that open source thing is that you've got a whole load of external components and things which are available on here. And one of the things they have in there is a whole load of compatibility layers for Android. Now, the way Android works is as every version comes along, the graphics change, the user interface stuff changes.
Right.
And you have to keep up with that. But what they've done is they've written these compatibility layers which allow you to use the modern stuff but run it on older devices.
Okay, so you say, I'm going to write on this, but I want to target this version over
So
here.
these have come from Google, and then Xamarin have written out wrappers for them, and they include that in the open source, so you can look back at that stuff and look at it.
And I noticed there as well there's training on there. So is
Yes,
that free and available training material?
Yeah,
for devs
so
that want to get
actually,
into
let me I hit the wrong button there, but let me just go back to that. So we've got the whole Xamarin University side of things. Now, Xamarin University isn't free,
Right.
but they have reduced the cost of that. It's half the price it was when I spoke to you last time.
Okay.
And I thought it was great value for money back then. So it's about $1,000, but you get an awful lot for that. Not only you get the ability to take the certified training and recertification, which I've just completed this year's recertification, but there's a whole load of courses about C#. You can learn C#. You can learn F# if you want to, from scratch. If you're a start-out developer and you want to learn a lot of stuff, brilliant. But the other thing is it keeps up to date with modern technology. So every time something new comes up, they put a quick lecture on, show you catch up on it, and they're constantly keeping up with that. The other great thing is you get one-on-ones with the tutors, which is like consultancy built into your package. So I can't think of where you could get, I think it's 3 or 4 days consultancy for $1,000 these days. So it's really worth having. Let's go back to the slides. So Xamarin Forms has really improved with the open source, and it's been an amazing thing. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. The number of pull requests is escalating on that, and there's definitely a shift away from the native development into the Xamarin Forms development. That seems to be the way most people are going.
Okay.
So this very shy and bashful guy is a guy called James Montemagno, who's a principal architect at Microsoft. But he's basically the chief evangelist for Xamarin. But before that, he was a developer for using Xamarin tooling. And over the years, he's created a load of components for Xamarin. I don't think I've been involved in a project which hasn't used something that James has written. A lot of people owe him a lot of drinks, if you want. So he has his own site called Mott's Codes, and we'll hop that in a second. But one of the things he's responsible for and has been really architectural in it is getting this open source library together of Xamarin components called the Xamarin Components Library, which is funny enough. So if I just hop onto that. And you can see here, this is a huge library. So in fact, it mentions those Android support libraries we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. There's bindings for Google Play, because that's something you might need to use. The Google APIs. Facebook, if you want to hook into Facebook, there's bindings for that. There's a great thing called Xamarin Auth, which allows you to do all the authorization with Twitter, Facebook, etc. Okay. If you don't want to use digital authentication, which obviously you can do, all this is open source. You can look into it and see where it goes. So if you're again worried about security, you want to work out how that authentication is working, you can go into the depths of it and see it.
And if you find an issue, please put a pull request in.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is that there's a lot of stuff which is very difficult to do on mobile. Right. Should be easy, but it's difficult because you have to do it in different ways on each platform. And there's ways to do that in Forms. You can write, you can do some dependency injection to put a native way approach of doing it. Things I'm thinking like accessing the camera or location information. Those things are actually quite tricky. They're different on each platform. You have to write different code for each platform. And if you're a Xamarin Forms developer, you may not know those platforms. You're writing stuff at the top level.
Okay.
So fortunately, there's been this, James's task in life for the last few years, it seems to be getting people together to actually develop plugins to actually handle those platform-specific inventions. And you can see this list here. I mean, we've got battery status, barcode scanners. There's huge amounts of things you can do, accessing the campus, connectivity, cryptography. I mean, that's a big point these days. It's really difficult to do. Again, tons of very, very useful iBeacons. Estimate stuff. So we've demoed on another talk iBeacon technology and things. There's lots of things you can do just totally cross-platform. And you write the code once in Forms and then call it in. Now, occasionally you need to do a little bit of native, but very, very little usually. It's usually just initializing the plugin.
Okay.
And these are all done as NuGet packages, so they're easy to pull in, very clean, very not difficult at all to actually work with. I just want to pick out one of these because this is actually one that is particularly difficult which is the in-app purchases. Now, I mentioned James has got his own site, moxcod.es, Mox Codes. He blogs on there every week about amazing Xamarin stuff, and he's got the inside track. He knows what he's talking about.
I noticed he also does a Channel 9 video.
He does, yeah. He does very much so. And Merge Conflict is one of the best podcasts you can ever listen to if you're a developer.
Okay.
Amazing. Great title for a podcast as well. So one of the difficulties on doing in-app purchases is each platform does it really differently. It's very difficult to set up. Now, this doesn't take away the pain of setting up on the actual stores, because you still have to do that. But it takes away all the pain of having to do the code behind. Now, I wrote in-app purchases for a couple of years ago, and it was about 40 lines of code for Android, 50 odd lines for iOS, and Windows Store was amazing. And as he says, check out this code to make a purchase. That's it, to handle in-app purchase. So basically, you connect to his cross-platform in-app billing. You obviously do need to set this stuff up in the back end. You call his purchasing async, and you pass in what you want to purchase, and then check in if the purchase occurred or not.
Wow.
And it's that simple. And it does all the native stuff for you. And this is the power of these plugins, because before this was here, everybody was rewriting that stuff. And this is, again, open source, so you can make sure it's not buying somebody else's product or anything behind it. And you've got all that power behind it to do it. So I really encourage people to check out James's site. It's on my slides, which we tweet out.
He is a lovely guy. I've met him, and he's
James
a really approachable chap if you ask him questions.
And he's always on Twitter. In fact, I was asking, when I knew I was doing this talk, I actually tweeted out for anybody to recommend their plugins, and James recommended his own one. but that's fine, because it is a brilliant plugin. So I heartily recommend it. He's a really good guy. If you catch his talks, I mean, obviously Channel 9, he does a lot of stuff on there. Really worth catching up on that. Highly recommend talking to that. Another guy I highly recommend you taking a look at is Martin here.
Okay.
Now, Martin's a fellow MVP. And now, people may not know Martin very well, because he tends to hide in the background and not make a big fuss, but he's a really important guy in the Xamarin community. It's become slightly less relevant as Xamarin Forms has come in, but still very relevant. He's the guy who invented MVVM Cross. This is the cross-platform implementation of the MVVM architecture.
Oh, right, okay.
And it's brilliant. All the messaging stuff, everything you would ever need to do in a model view model approach. I still think the acronym's wrong. We've had this discussion before, but it should be model view. But anyway.
Yeah, I play my IT pro, not getting involved with dev arguments.
But anyway.
So is that, I know the guys that I work with use MVVM, and they're using that for Windows apps. And is that the kind of thing, if we've written using the Windows MVVM framework, we can pull it across relatively quickly?
And it's cross-platform, it works across all the platforms. So,
right.
So it's really, again, very impressive, and I'll just fire up his site. So Martin's done a lot of things other than MVVM, and he's obviously got the MVVM cross stuff, but he's also done a load of, there's just almost too much on here to mention, but there's some really nice stuff. If you want to use, for example, video playback, the VLC player is one of the best ways of playing back video. He's got a plugin for that.
Okay.
So there's a lot of really useful stuff he's written in here. Again, I encourage people to have a look through it and say, again, all open source, all available to look through, contribute, and definitely the MVVM cross, that's a tongue twister, that's had a lot of contributions.
Right.
So it's well worth looking at that. And you can learn an awful lot by looking at his code. If you want to learn how to work with Xamarin, that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, I guess that's the measure of it. How many times has it been copied, forked and cloned?
Yeah, exactly. So that's basically all my slides. Now, I think it's about time we wrote some code.
All righty then.
So I've started a bare bones Xamarin project here.
Okay, so what you might want to do, Gary, is just make that text a little bigger for those watching in teeny tiny windows.
I'll see if I can, if it's going to respond. The Mac is not responding at the moment. Let me just do my view. Zoom. So I've just changed. I've been working in Visual Studio for Mac for the last couple of days, and I've had an issue with it, so I've had to go back to Xamarin Studio. It's not set up as well as I'd normally like it, but let's just give it a couple more zoom in so people can actually see. Is it getting any bigger? It takes a while to do this, unfortunately.
That's right. That's probably a little better. Yeah, let's go with that.
Let's go with that. So just to actually quick background there, when we were talking last time, you had Visual Studio, you could write Xamarin in Visual Studio, and there was also Xamarin Studio which ran on the Mac.
Yep.
it'll be out of previews fairly shortly, but there's now Visual Studio for the Mac, which is basically an evolution of Xamarin Studio with similar styling and tooling to Visual Studio, and will be the platform going forward for development on the Mac.
Right.
And not just for the Xamarin toolkit, you can write web sites in it, you can do Azure stuff, all those stuff is going to be available in that.
Okay.
Anyway, so this is a very simple application. It's just basically a bare bones Xamarin Forms application. It's using the shared project approach. There's two approaches you can do with Xamarin Forms. You can either use a PCL pickle library, which is like a .NET cut down version of .NET, shared across the different platforms, or you can actually just share the code between the various projects, and that's what I'm doing this time, sharing the code. Very simple. So I've got 3 projects. I've got the main shared code project, I've got an Android project, and I've got an iOS project. Now I've actually got an Android device connected to my thing, so I'm actually going to concentrate on the Android project, but basically it would work completely cross-platform. So the name probably gives it a little bit away. It's called Morse Lamp. This goes back to, I was thinking about what could I do for this talk, and I went back in my history, and the first contribution I ever made to an open source project was for a Morse code translator.
Okay.
Taking text and turning it into Morse code, dots and dashes.
Right.
So I thought, let's bring that into the modern age. So we've got a phone which has got a lamp on it.
Okay.
And it's really easy to make the lamp flash. Well, it is really easy to make the lamp flash, but you have to do it in 3 different ways for each of the platforms. Yeah, fortunately, one of those plugins we saw a little while ago is a LED lamp plugin.
Oh, is that Mr. Montemagno?
Well, actually, not this time. It's one of the Xamarin University tutors has actually written this one. We'll see in a second. I'll get onto that in a second. So, one of the things I know I'm going to need to do this, and I've actually started on this, is I'm going to need to have some security options set up, some permissions. So what I've gone in and I've asked for. Now, it's interesting actually. I've asked for the flashlight, but I've also had to ask for the camera. I discovered this yesterday, that to turn the flashlight on and off, you actually need camera permission as well on modern versions of Android, which is a bit strange. But that's basically what I've done. I've asked for that, and I've asked for the flashlight. And in older versions of Android, that's all I would have to do. But in modern versions of Android, you've now got to handle permissions in a different way. You've actually got pop-up user requests for permissions. They don't just accept them when they first install the app, they actually have to accept them over time.
So, I mean, that was, in that dialogue, it said Xamarin application, it said Android application, you were showing you the list. If you'd got an iOS one in there as well, does it show you a separate iOS permissions, and you've got to set both of them? Yes,
you would have to. So the iOS app permissions are very different.
Right, so it's not quite clever enough to go, aha, you said camera, therefore.
No, it's not. Maybe that'll come, but at least we know now we can ask for our permissions in one common way. Because asking for permissions in Android is quite tricky, in iOS it's quite tricky, and both of them now force you to ask the user as you start the application.
Right, okay.
Or when you go back in the applications. So what I'm actually going to do is add in a package to actually help me with that, because this is one of James's ones. So there's a permissions plugin for Xamarin, which is published by Mr. Montemagno, and that makes doing permissions really, really easy. And I'm going to cheat a little bit because I've actually got some code which comes from another open source project which actually makes asking for a camera permission a little bit easier.
Okay.
So I'm going to add that code into the project as well. If I can just find the right place to add that. Add files. So I've got this camera permissions file. And I'll just copy it, it'll tell me I've already got it there, but I'll just override it. And if we look at that, that's going through and using that permissions dialog to basically check if you've got permissions, and then check if you've actually got a permission for using the camera.
Okay.
And I need to then add that into my code here. So let's add in, oops, not Z. That's the code for doing the camera permission. I'm just calling the camera permission arguments. Okay. So I've now got some nice camera permissions. But that's not really very helpful, because all I'm asking now is, can I use the camera? I actually want to do something with it. I want to turn that light on and off. Fortunately, we have another package which is really useful, and this is the one we were just talking about. So if I go back to adding some packages again, and this is the LAMP plugin for Xamarin, which is written by Kim Philpotts. Kim's an Australian Xamarin University lecturer, and if you actually look at the lot of plugins, they're either written by James or they tend to be written by the Xamarin University lecturers, so they know what they're talking about.
Sense? Yep.
They actually do this stuff day to day. They're not just doing lectures, they actually tend to run companies themselves or work for people. So I plug that in. And now what I could do now is actually just call that code. I think it's called plugin.lamp. Just help if I put it in the right place. But yeah, I could call that code. Let me just see if I've got that actually in here. I think I may have
That's a seat of the pants demo. That is, Gary. If you're just going to type code live.
Well, yeah, maybe I'll cut and paste it. I've got it sitting away over here. So just because I can't actually remember what it is. There we go. It's camera basically cross. That's the one. Cross lamp current turn on and turn off. So I could bung that into this code and like that, and we'd actually be able to turn the camera on and off. But that's a bit boring. Just turning the light on or off. Yeah, we want to do a bit more than that.
So it's a start. We've got a light that blinks. It's like a machine that goes ping.
Well, yeah, but you could do a lot with that. There's lots of things, but maybe we want to use that light to send messages. So
that'd be cool, Gary. Can we use the light to send messages?
We can use the light to send messages. So going back to what I said before, we've got Morse code.
Right.
Now,
I don't know Morse code.
No. Well, I kind of know a bit of Morse code, but this is actually quite interesting because you don't just have to use the Xamarin open source stuff.
Right.
You can use any .NET code which is out there.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. As long as it's not platform specific stuff, you can plug in to your common codes. So I've got here the guys at Black Wasp actually came up with a nice bit of code for converting code across.
Because of course there's a .NET library to do Morse code translation.
Yeah, of course there is.
Yeah.
I mean, why bother? And it's probably evolved from the one I was involved in many years ago. Because it's basically the same technology. So I basically downloaded that code, and what I'll do is I'll plug that into my bit of code here, and we'll have a look at that. Now I did actually do one tweak to it because it didn't do one thing I needed. So where's that gone? Morse converter.cs. So we'll copy that in. Right again, and there's our Morse converter code. So it's basically just creating a dictionary of all the conversions, and then you pass into it. You can convert a character, or you can convert words. Now, one of the things I actually needed to do, one tweak I made to this, and this is great because it's open source, I can tweak this source code. I needed to be able to work out when a character ended.
Right.
Because I don't know if you know, you don't know. You said you don't know Morse code.
I don't know Morse code.
Okay, well, Morse code is, you know it's dots and dashes.
Yeah.
So there isn't a specified length, but basically a dot is 1 unit, a dash is 3 units. There's a gap between dots and dashes of 1 unit, and there's a gap at each character of 3 units.
Okay, all right.
So you go dot 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 dot, and pause, and then between words there's a 7 unit gap, and basically so between each character is a single unit. So we needed to know where each of the characters ended, which we didn't have in this. So I basically just tweaked this code to add this @ symbol on the end of each one. So we go through.
Okay. Yep.
So basically it goes through, it converts the text. Very simple code. Nothing much to it, but we need something to run it. So I'm actually going to just add in some forms code now, just to show how you actually would lay out the screen. So this is really basic layout. I'm not doing any clever theming or anything like this. So I'm adding what's called a stack layout, which is like a vertical list of controls. I'm going to add a label into that. Please enter the text to Morse. What's I'm going to call that? We'll add an entry in there. Oops, I mistyped that. I'll get that in a second. Actually, I probably don't want to call it Morse text.
So as somebody who has done a bit of XAML in the past, I'm squinting and looking and going, that looks hauntingly familiar.
It's very similar to the WPF XAML. It is different. It's different enough you have to relearn it. I've had this conversation, but it's you can read it. I mean, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to work out what I'm doing here. So I'm adding a button in, clicked event. So I was about to do on clicked, which obviously is not right, but button clicked and then button clicked. Actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, make that text to convert. And actually, one thing I did just do there, I took the space out after name because that would actually throw the XAML interpreter. It's a bit fussy on those.
Okay.
And I'm just going to make vertical options so this is centered on the screen. So very simple bit of Xamarin XAML to actually basically load up a screen.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm also going to do now is I'm going to cut and paste some code because I can't be bothered to type it out again, to actually add in some actions based on that code. So So we've got down here some code here's code I wrote earlier. So we've already put the permissions in. I'm going to grab the button clicked event because that's what we just coded in there, and I'll make sure I grab it in the right place and bung that into here, and then I'll talk you through what that's going to do. So we've got our button clicked event. So when I click that button on the screen, what's going to happen is it's going to fire up. It's going to check to see if the text is null, because if we don't want to do anything, if the text is null. It's then going to create a new instance of our Morse converter and use that to convert the text which we've got typed in. So that's then going to come back as dot dash dot 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 with @ signs every time there's a character change and a space every time there's a word break.
Okay, yep, I follow, yep.
So we then need to work on that. And what I'm going to do on there is for each character in that string, we're going to check to see what it is. So if it's a dot, I'm just going to turn the light on, cross lamp turn on. I'm going to then wait for a pulse length, and I haven't actually put the pulse length in yet at the moment, so I'll need to key that in, otherwise it's not going to work. I also haven't actually added in the using statements yet, so that's not going to work, but we'll put those in a minute. So I'm going to just, for one unit, I'm going to turn the lamp on, and then it's going to be turned off.
Okay, yeah.
And then the second one gets down the bottom here out of the case unit. I'm pointing out the screen, you obviously can't see what I'm doing, so I'll point with the mouse. So down here at the bottom, there's the cross lamp turn off. And I'm going to also, if it's a dash, we know that's 3 units long. So what I'm actually going to do is turn it on and do a wait for 3 seconds.
Okay.
Doing a wait task delay doesn't stop the UI thread, so it's quite useful to do this. At that point, if you try and do sleeps, you're hanging the UI thread, which is not a good practice.
Right.
And also awaiting it. So this is why this function is an async method. And then what I'm going to do is, if it's the @ sign, so we know it's the end of a character, we're going to add an extra delay of 2 pulses. Now you're going to say to me,
I was going to say, I thought you said it was like 5 or something.
It's 3. It was 3. The reason I'm not doing that is I'm always for every single one of these, I'm actually going to do a single pulse delay at the end anyway.
Okay.
So I'm just going to delay it for 3, and I'm not turning the lamp on at that point. I'm just going to leave it off, and then I'm going to do similarly for if it's a space, I'm going to add 6, and then at the end I'm going to turn it off and do it. Now you can say that turn off is a bit wasted on the spaces, and we probably could write a bit of clever code for that, but it's basically there. So I need to add some usings, and I have to see if I can remember what the using is for that. What was so it's cross lamp. It's actually I can't remember what the using is for that one, so I'll just cut and paste that. So never do a test of memory when you're trying to do code. So it's actually lamp.plugin. I would have struggled to remember that. And I also need to add the plugin permissions as well. So let's bung those in. They have actually got a lot more consistent in the naming of these things. So most of them are cross-platform or cross-text.
Okay.
But now, James's cross-permission. It's easy to remember that. And most of them are now plugin dot something or other, but I think Kim wrote this one some time ago to do this lamp.plugin. Anyway, so I've added that in. I also now need to add in my units for the interval, because obviously that's...
Okay, so you're going to define how long a pulse is, and then
yes,
the maths works.
Yeah. So I'm going to have an int, and I think, I did call it pulse. And I think we decided earlier that about 150 is a good, 150 milliseconds is a good gap.
Okay.
A reasonable slow. So one of the problems when you're dealing with the lights on these things, they take a while to warm up and to cool down. So trying to blink them on and off is somewhat challenging, but that should be enough to do that. So we've got all that code nicely written now. And shall I try and run it?
Go on.
Let's see if I can actually hit the run button and see what I've missed off in the process of doing this.
So is that going to deploy that? It's going to compile it, deploy it to your Android device?
Yes. Yeah. So and I've got a few errors. Now, what have I missed out? Camera permission. So I've obviously forgotten to change the namespace on that camera permission, because it's obviously, yes, that's right. I pulled it in from a different project, so that's easy enough to solve that one.
It's okay, it's proof that we're live.
Yeah, indeed. And flag out away. So hopefully this time it won't error that. Oh, we've still got an error. Oh, yes, that's the other one, of course. So I've got the task delay in there, but I'm not using. So let's see if Xamarin Studio's quick fix will actually work. Because obviously, Visual Studio, you're quite used to having these tools to actually help you fix something. This will do as well.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
So just prove that, and obviously Visual Studio for Mac's got that as well.
Yeah.
It's all based on the Rosslyn stuff, so it's that .NET stuff which has been open sourced. Everybody's able to use it for the cross-compiler things, and the tools and everything are all in there.
So you're sort of expecting the Visual Studio for Mac is going to slowly but surely pull in the features and functions of its sort of PC big brother then?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That's what I certainly hope that way. And there will obviously be things it can't do because it's on a Mac, and it wouldn't be appropriate. But you're starting to see a lot of stuff. As I mentioned, Azure is there now, which is really good to be able to deploy directly. So this is now building, and this time hopefully it won't error. It's building our application slowly. It does take a little while to build Android, slightly quicker to build iOS, but also this Mac I'm running on here is actually my backup one, which is why I haven't got nice stickers like everybody else has got on the back. And this has only got about 4 gigs of RAM. One bit of advice anybody who's buying equipment to do Xamarin development, make sure it's got a lot of memory. Typical as you would with any development tool, basically.
So I mean, I do notice that you've got your Android device. Now, okay, you've got to have a physical one because it needs flashing light. If I'm doing this on my PC, I've got an Android emulator that comes with the Xamarin tools. I don't have an iOS one. I've got to use an iOS device. If you're developing on a Mac with the Xamarin tools, do you still need an Android device, or is there an emulator on the Mac for the Android?
There is an emulator for the Mac on the Android. Sorry, on the Mac for Android. Obviously, there's not an emulator on Windows for iOS because it relies on the Mac. But what you can do is have a Mac build agent. So it's just one Mac device, which you then target from, and you can target that from your Visual Studio on your Windows. And what's really nice now is you can actually pipe that emulator to your Windows machine, so you can see what's happening on it.
Okay, well, that's quite sweet.
And you can do that with the actual physical device as well, and actually bring the device window through. It's quite nice. So I've got an app now. I probably can't see that, but it's basically asking me to enter the text I want to Morse.
Okay.
So let's use the usual thing that most people know from Morse, and hopefully it's starting to flash. And I think hopefully...
I hope that's not a reflection on my hosting capabilities here.
So you read that, didn't you? That's SOS, which is great. So we've written a really nice application. Now, in the spirit of today, I'm actually going to open source this, and we'll bung it up on the library so people can get to it. But I've got a little challenge before we close up today.
Right.
So I'm actually going to put something in here. I'll run this a couple of times so people can get it. So I've put a 3-letter code in here. Now, if people tweet this to my Twitter handle, @Gary2Rs_WMA, the first person to tweet that will win the monkey. I was promised to do that a couple of times, so there's a monkey to be given away. They're getting quite rare now.
They are, yeah. I finally managed to get hold of one a little while ago, and they're like gold dust.
So stand by. I'm about to blink. So let's fire away. I'll do this a couple of times. So it's a 3-letter code, so it should give you an idea what it is. It's very simple. Right, so we'll do it one more time.
Suddenly I feel like I'm on Swap Shop. So, Gary, what competition prizes have you brought in today?
I always try to bring something in. So, done that. When I open source this, I mean, it's not very styled. So this, but you could see that this, with a little bit of styling, could be published onto the App Store very quickly and actually have some benefit. Okay. And we've written that, in 15 minutes?
Yeah.
And I admittedly had some code already keyed in, but that was code which was, the Morse code bit of it is actually just taken from the original Morse library sample, so it's not just with the blinky light bit put in. So you can see that it's really easy to write this stuff. It's not difficult because you've got all these plugins. And if we just hop back to that list of plugins, just to remind ourselves, if I get the right bit of my control, it's a problem when you're actually running a device you're not quite used to. You don't quite know where you put things. So we've used that lamp plugin really easily. All these things are very similar to that. You just plug them in, use them. So we could now just take this. So we've got the lamp working. But it'd be really easy to use the sound plugin to make it actually beep Morse. Mm-hmm. Or we could use the communication. I mean, there's Microsoft Band plugin here. Not that many people have got their Microsoft Bands now, but you could imagine you could actually send it across to your band and
vibrate your band. That's quite
vibrate
cool.
your band in Morse code. So you can just expand it beyond these things. Why don't you want to? But you might want to send Morse remotely. You could do that as well. Because
that's exactly what we want to do with digital devices. Send something that was invented at 18, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's old school. But you get the point. I mean, you could use this for all sorts of things. You're not tied into those into stuff, having to write lots of code on the individual platforms. You can just plug components together.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the way modern development. We've got all these lovely bits of open source code out there. I wish I had this 20 years ago. It would have made my life so much easier.
So there's one thing that I have been wanting to ask you. So obviously, I'm out there talking to people in the community. I'm seeing an awful lot of interest in Xamarin now from corporates, who've got lots of developers, they've got .NET skills. I don't tend to interact with the developer community outside corporates just because of what I do. Are you seeing an uptake in the interest for Xamarin outside of line of business apps as well, since it went open source
I think so. I think actually going open source was a huge thing. Actually, and also, of course, the community edition, because up to that point it was a bit expensive for people for your one-man band type developer to actually use it. Funny enough, the biggest update I've probably seen recently is in games development.
Okay.
Because we've got there's a couple of games layout libraries which will plug into Xamarin. Full 3D sprites, the lots. And there's been, I know of 5 or 6 games written in the last 2 or 3 months, which have been published and are doing very well. In fact, one of them's up in the top 100, which is really good for a game. So there's been a lot on that respect. Certainly, I lecture occasionally at the University College London to the app development students, and they have a choice on what platform to use. Mm-hmm. They can choose. And what I'm finding there is that since I've been doing those lectures, they've started to choose Xamarin more often because it's easy. That's they find it a lot easier to work with than some of the other languages, right, and some of the other toolings. And obviously, the other advantages of Xamarin is it's native, so you've got all that performance benefit. And there are horses for courses. I mean, and certainly in tooling, there's other toolings you could use. There's the Cordoba approach, which is basically taking a website and running it in a wrapper. So it's a native app, but it's running the website basically inside it. And that can be brilliant for some cases. If you've just got an informational system you want to bung up there, or just something, your blog, you want to put it out there. That's a good way of doing that. Okay. But it relies on being connected, although it can run offline. But to refresh the data, it needs to be connected. And it's slow, and it doesn't necessarily look native. I have to give them their due. They've been working very hard on it. It's getting much more native looking. And there's other toolings out there as well. But if you've got .NET background at all, if you've got any C# skills, or even F#, because you can actually write F# for Xamarin.
Okay.
So you can do functional programming and create your mobile app.
So is it any .NET language, or is it really just sort of C#, F#?
It's basically C#, although technically you could write any of them and cross-compile it, because it takes it to the .NET Core and .NET ILM and then intermediate language, and then does a just-in-time compile. Or actually, one really interesting thing is the compiler, the JIT compiler they use for Android is faster than the native Android compiler. so actually, you can write the same bit of code in Xamarin and actually have it running faster than if you were using native Java for Android, which is quite a cool thing. But yeah, so I'm definitely seeing more of an uptake. I think there's more of a community feed on that. There's always going to be the people who've been brought up in iOS and Android who find that difficult to move across. And fair enough, they've got the native skills, might as well use the native languages. But if you've got people who've got .NET skills, it's so easy to create. If you've created any form of .NET program, you can write a mobile app.
Great. Well, we're just coming up on time. Thanks for that, Gary. That was really interesting. It's always nice to finish the day with you and do something a little bit different rather than just pure cloud or pure .NET dev.
I'd like to get that developer influence.
So now with your C# t-shirt and your Xamarin Monk.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for watching. This is the last session of day 2 of TechDays Online. Before we switch off and disappear, tomorrow we've got a great day planned. We're looking at blockchain, we're looking at IoT, we've got an introduction to quantum computing, which I'm certainly looking forward to learn quite a lot about. And we've also then got Professor Bradley Love from the Alan Turing Institute is coming on to talk to us. And finally, the last session of the day before the marvellous Gene Kim comes on is something a bit different. We've got 4 regional directors who are kind of the commercial equivalent of MVPs. I guess Gary and I are very active in the community. The regional directors are more about sort of bringing a commercial voice into Microsoft from outside the organization. And there's a panel of them going to be talking a bit about what they do and what they think is important. So it's going to be a really interesting day, great content. As I said before, don't stray too far from Channel 9 because the Americans are coming online in a couple of hours with their own Tech Days online. Obviously, it won't be good as the English equivalent, the original, invented here. But hopefully that's going to be a really entertaining watch for you. And I just want to say thanks very much to Gary and all of the rest of the speakers today. Thank you very much for listening and goodbye.
Thank you very much.